everyone. Welcome to November, which is where we will be talking about my top 10 zombie film picks. One thing you will notice, this is filmed post-Hurricane Milton, which was terrifying, more terrifying than any movie I've ever watched. You'll probably notice some flies flitting about, and that's because I am struggling to get them out of my she shed. That's because of the hurricane. That's not because your godmother has joined the legions of the undead and is a zombie herself. That said, zombies have been very good to me professionally. I have sold more zombie stories than I have any other monster. One thing I really enjoy about zombie movies is that they are sort of a barometer of social pressure, meaning that when you look at the date when the film was made, the zombies inhabit some of the social issues that were going on, and we'll be talking about that as we go through this top 10 list. Number 10 is my nostalgia pick. I always have a nostalgia pick, and this is Night of the Comet from 1984, directed by Tom Eberhardt and starring Catherine Mary Stewart and Kelly Maroney. And this was the first zombie film that I ever saw. Somehow I had managed to talk my parents into getting HBO. I have no idea how that happened because they were not big on doing things like that. But somehow we had HBO. And you Gen Xers remember, you would come home from school, nobody would be home. You'd put on HBO and you would just like watch the same movies over and over again. This was the one, Night of the Comet, I probably watched dozens of times. In this one, the zombies are the result of a comet that's cruising too close to Earth. And presumably this is the same comet that made the dinosaurs extinct. The cultural barometer here is that 1980s mall consumer culture, because they're stuck in a mall, and a big part of this film, and there are many like shopping, trying on clothes montages, which was probably part of the reason why I enjoyed watching it, because I was a kid and I was familiar with malls, and you always sort of think about like, what if I were stuck in this mall overnight by myself, what would happen? Like most zombie films, this has that scenario of how do the survivors shake out in a post-apocalyptic world. And I've mentioned in my other top 10s that I really enjoy that, seeing who becomes the baddie, who self-sacrifices. In this film, we have very few survivors, some of whom are scientists who knew in advance that the comet was coming and this would happen. You conspiracy theorists love that sort of a thing, right? So this movie is cute, it's silly, and it's so 1980s. Number 9 is Yummy from 2019, and this is a Belgian film. I should preface this to say, of my top 10 list, only 2 are American films, so that might say something about where my heart lies when it comes to zombie films. Yummy is a Belgian film directed by Lars Damiso, I messed up his name, starring Maggie Neuville and Bart Hollanders. And this film takes place in a plastic surgery ward where they also are doing stem cell research. So the cultural barometer here is sort of 2 things if you think about 2019. First, plastic surgery, our desire to remain young, to remain forever youthful, which kind of pairs nicely with zombies, because zombies are sort of forever, but they're not young, they're falling apart. But also our inability to say enough when it comes to scientific experimentation. Now that's nothing new, and we've seen that in traditional literature like Frankenstein, but the stem cell research is very much 2019, a pre-COVID sort of fixation. The zombies in this instance are the result of the scientific experimentation. This movie is funny. There's a lot of dark humor in it. There's a lot of gore in it. And there is a scene with a penis that is pretty indescribable. Number 8 is Dead Snow from 2009, directed by Tommy Ricola, starring Jeff Black Larson and Charlotte Frogner. And this is sort of a cabin in the woods zombie take. Culturally, this is a foreign film. It's Norwegian, so the cultural barometer here is not exclusively American, but it does shed a light on the plight of millennials and Gen Z who are trying to navigate a world that has been scavenged by those who've come before. The zombies in this case are Nazis who have been reanimated due to their treasure being stolen, disrupted. This movie has a lot of really fun meta moments. There is shock value here. There's a scene with an outhouse that's particularly, like you might want to look away. But there is a scene of the Nazis coming up through the snow that is so cool. If you don't even want to watch this film, go on YouTube and just watch that scene. Number 7 is The Sadness from 2021. This is a Taiwanese film directed by Rob Jabaz and starring Baran Zhu and Regina. The zombies in this one, these are rage zombies. They are incredibly cruel. And when I say this is a favorite, your godmother didn't necessarily enjoy watching this as much as I have the utmost respect for the special effects of this film, which were amazing. Things looked incredibly real, incredibly disturbing. The other thing that I really enjoyed, I guess enjoyed is the word, or respected or was interested in about this film, is that they added a sexual component to the zombies. So they're not just like mindlessly eating, they're also mindlessly raping. I don't know. They're pure id. These zombies are pure id. The zombies are the result of a virus. And, if you've lived through COVID, this movie is completely recognizable. We have a government that's not sure how to respond to the virus, is not sure if it's really a threat or not. It plays out exactly like COVID. So the social barometer here, cultural barometer, is very relatable and very recent for most of us. The zombies look cool here. They look scary. Again, this is not an easy film to watch. This is extreme horror that really borders on pornography. Number 6 is my other American zombie film, Night of the Living Dead from 1968, directed by George Romero and starring Dwayne Jones and Judith O'Dea. In this film, the zombies are the result of radiation from an exploding space probe returning from Venus. So we have an obvious space chase illusion here, which was, a fear and an aspect of contention in 1968 when this film was released. This movie is pivotal, and I'm going to try to really not go on and on because I could do a dissertation on this, but it's pivotal in the fact that it took zombies and moved them from Haitian or voodoo zombies to this zombie where no one's controlling them, no one's in control, and no one can turn them back. It's really full apocalypse. There's so much of the 60s, late 60s, early 70s in this film. It's impossible to watch it without looking at it through a political lens. Obvious civil rights movement issues in this film. I know Romero said that he had Dwayne Jones the lead due to budget issues, but it's a little too on the nose to have an African-American male leading this movie, to not be deliberate. I don't believe Romero on this one. There are allusions to the Vietnam War. There are allusions to the breakdown of the family unit. I mean, the fact that most of it's taking place in a home in the 60s when we had sexual liberation and, women returning to work or going to work, and using birth control and divorce becoming something that people started to do. We did have big fears about the family unit breaking down, and this really shows that. This film, I watched it again recently. It's still so bleak. It's still, and that's why it's number 6. Number 5 is Shaun of the Dead from 2004, which is a British film directed by Edgar Wright and starring Simon Pegg and Kate Ashfield. And this is such a super fun movie. I know most of you have seen this, and I believe most of you agree with me on that. It's more than a zombie spoof, though. Like, people go into this thinking it's just a satire. It's more than that. It really hits you in the feels. It's nicely nuanced. In this film, there's this zombie breakout, and it's spread through bites, as we know zombies do. And the zombies are mindless, but the main characters are too. I mean, the main characters are kind of, I don't want to say they're losers, but they're kind of hapless. And then because of this zombie apocalypse, they're thrust into these heroic roles. And that's where the humor stems from. Again, we have a social barometer here that's focused on the economy and the struggle to basically adult in a world where the parameters of adulthood are vague, they're unsatisfying, and basically they're out of reach for most. We also, what I love about this film is there's a post-zombie apocalypse, if that makes sense, ending, where we find out what happens after the case, after the zombies are battled against. This is a cult classic for very good reason. Number 4 is 28 Days Later in 2002. This is another British zombie apocalypse film directed by Danny Boyle and starring Cillian Murphy and Naomi Harris. And I'm also a big fan of the graphic novel of this. Just want to put a plug in for that. If you've not looked at the graphic novel, you should. It's really well done. In this film, the zombies, again, are rage virus zombies. They're rage zombies. It's sort of like a mad cow disease virus, but it's spread when a group of animal rights activists, so cultural barometer here, release a captive monkey from a science lab, and that monkey's been infected and then goes on to infect others. Our main character, Jim, who's played by Murphy, who's one of my favorite actors, he awakens from a coma to find himself alone in this world that's populated with monsters. I mean, imagine that. That's crazy, right? Then he goes to look for other survivors, and that's where we see that breakdown of social configuration. We have our baddies who take advantage of the situation in really diabolical ways, and we have our heroes. What really attracted me to this film, I love the way it's filmed, and I love the way the zombies move. They're super fast. We don't have sluggish zombies in this film. They are extra predatory. They're very scary. And this film, when it came out in 2002, it gave new life, pun intended, to zombie films. Number 3 is The Night Eats the World from 2018. I love this movie. This is a French film directed by Dominique Rocher and starring Anders Danielsen, who is basically alone for most of the film. Again, 2018, but it's amazing and eerie how prescient this film was about COVID and quarantines. It really, as I'm watching it, I really thought when I was first watching it that this had to have been filmed post-COVID. That's how much it really mirrors what it felt like to be quarantined. But something that I also really love about this film is how our main character, Sam, is alone even when he's with people in the beginning. Like, he has a difficulty forming connections with other people, and it's his loneliness that's the horror in this film. And during the zombie apocalypse, again, he's alone for most of the film, and he's with these zombies who are completely voiceless. They just go, like, they make these weird slobbery sounds, but they don't really make sound either. and there's very little dialogue because he's by himself. It's a fascinating film. It's beautifully shot. The acting's amazing. It's very minimalistic because it all takes place in one apartment building for the most part. It's super artsy. I mean, it's French. It's French people. It's super artsy. But I immediately cared about Sam when I watched this. Like, I really wanted to know what happened to him. Just between us, his zombie apocalypse plan really mirrors mine. So that might be why I was like seeing I felt a connection to him, even though he had a connection to nobody. I'm like, that's exactly what I would do in this moment. So the social barometer here is just how society is dissolving as we all sort of withdraw from each other and lose that ability to form connections. Okay, I'm not going to be able to give this one justice because I'm being very vague about it. I don't want to give anything away, but it's One Cut of the Dead from 2017, which is a Japanese film, and you really need to give this a chance. Give it a chance. It's amazing. It's directed by Shinichiro Ueda and starring Takayuki Hamatsu and Yuzuki Akiyama. And when you start watching this, the first part of the film, it just feels odd. It's so low budget and odd and clunky. And then you realize it's all been filmed in one take. Like, you've got 30 minutes of just one take, which is really, really cool. And then the story shifts and you realize that we're watching, it's very meta. We're watching a low budget film being made about zombies. And then we sort of get the backstory on the actors and directors. And then we shift to behind the scenes of the film. I know I'm not doing it justice. It's really, really cool. It's really amazing. We have some really funny characters here, like washed up actors. And we have some really charming characters. And I love the ending. I knew I saw it coming, but I still loved it. The social barometer here goes in a lot of different ways. And there's some really unique things going on here that as Americans we can relate to, even though this is a Japanese film, like this whole idea of script versus non-script, which we face with our reality shows, right? Which are highly scripted, even though we're supposed to pretend that they're not. Also, this idea that filming is now accessible to everybody. We have a lot of people out there who are considered like amateurs making wonderful low budget films, and then we have people making low budget films like the one they're trying to make here. Again, I loved this movie, and I don't want to give too much away, but really, you will get a lot of pleasure watching this. Just give it a chance. And number one is Train to Busan from 2016, which is a Korean film directed by Yeon Sang-ho and starring Gong Yoo and Jung Yoo-mi. And if this movie did not break your heart, then you do not have one. I've watched it several times, and I watched it before my husband did, and I asked him to watch it with me at one point, and I warned him. I said, this is not a typical zombie film. Like, you're not just watching. Part of our enjoyment of zombie films is just watching their brains get bashed in, right? Watching all the unique ways we have of eliminating the zombies. I'm like, this one really, you're going to get pulled into it emotionally. And I don't think he heard me because at the end of the film, he looked at me and he said, why didn't you tell me? So I'm warning you if you haven't seen it yet. It tugs at your heartstrings. It really does. In this film, the passengers are stuck on a train. That's why it's called Train to Busan. And more people on the train become infected. There's a microcosm of society on this train, and their presence is part of that whole social barometer thing that I'm talking about. We have the cynical businessman, we have the high school athletes, we have the couple expecting their first child, and we have a child as one of our main characters. So the stakes are really, really high. This movie is intense. The action is ramped up. And again, you really care. You really care about what's going to happen. And the ending is, yeah, it's a lot. So thank you for sticking with me through my zombie picks. Next month, just when we're expecting that man in the red suit to fly through the skies, I will be doing my top 10 alien films. So if you don't want to miss that, hit the subscribe button.